Hi, my name is Steve Briscoe. I'm the designer of the Novetta. I don't say builder because I've had a lot of help constructing the car along the way, not the least of which was George Baldwin, who took my chassis design and made it into metal. Greg Grisham, who did a lot of fabrication on it. Jonathan Williams also did a lot of fabrication on it. And even have a custom shift knob made by a friend at Phoenix Shift Knobs. So if you want to know how to build a car, my first suggestion would be start with a car. I thought, how hard can it be? I mean, people over the decades have built cars, you know, single person, just with an idea in their head. And that's what I had. I'd had a Mustang, 65 Mustang before that, 1972 40Z. I had a first year Miata. I had a first year MR2, 63 Falcon convertible. So I've had a lot of different cars, but they were always really nice Mustangs or really nice Falcons. And I wanted something that was unique. I guess my ego said I needed something that was totally unique. Having lived in LA for 15 some odd years, doing stand-up comedy, you get used to a certain level of attention, and I enjoy that, I have to admit. I was the on-camera spokesperson for the largest independently owned hardware store chain in New York State, and I did their commercials for 16 years, and like I said, you just get used to people looking at you a certain way, and it's fun. I enjoy it. So I decided to build the Novetta. It's called the Novetta. The story I made up was that the little Italian guy who designed the body, people would say, "Oh, it looks like a Corvette," and he would say, "No, that's a Novetta. That's a Novetta." So that's how it got its name, the Novetta. It's even got its own badge made, and it was an enjoyable process. But I'll tell you what, you're going to learn a lot, because you have to learn about spring rates, and you have to learn about chassis design and suspension design and engine fitment and what goes to what. And it took me, I'm guessing, nearly 2 decades. Obviously, family takes precedence. We moved a bunch. Finances, always a concern. I had to do it little by little on a very finite budget, which sometimes got more finite than at other times. So it was a work of love and a work of passion, and I think it turned out great. Had a very talented fiberglass guy do the finishing work on it, Rob Qualls, and finished the design. The original body I found in a friend's garage. In fact, the gentleman that did the chassis, he had the body sitting in a big warehouse in back of his house. And I thought, oh man, that is so nice. I told a friend about it. I said, oh, this body is so nice. And of course, my friend went and bought it. Just didn't tell me, just bought it, right? So I'm thinking, well, there goes the chance of building a car. I looked for a Kellison for a long time, very unique, very distinctive body type. And could never quite make a deal work for a Kellison body. And then my friend who bought the body said, you know what, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to this. So I looked at it and said, it's got the basics of what I want. And it had the very basics. Had I known how much work I was going to do to it, I think I would have started the body from nothing as well, because when you look at it compared to the body that I started with, the wheelbase has been extended 6 inches total. The wheel wells have been moved outward. Every wheel well has been flared. There was 5 inches cut off the perimeter all around the bottom. And then the frame is a perimeter frame with the seats sitting down into the frame. So the body sets down on that to lower it. Total height is a little over 40 inches, about 41 inches. And it had gull-wing doors, which are difficult at the best of times. When designed by Mercedes, they can be problematic. and these were, designed by some guy in California that built fiberglass bodies with big bronze hinges, and the hinges set down into the roof, so they impinged on headroom by a good 2.5, 3 inches. So combining the perimeter frame that the seats sit down onto the floor with the loss of the gull wing doors, I designed regular front hinge doors. I gained probably 5 or 6 inches of headroom, which was it's a tiny car. I'm a little guy, but even at that, it's snug to say the least. I joke that I've been doing martial arts for a long time, and of all the training that I've had, the time that I've been able to put it to use the most is ingress and egress from the Novetta. It's just simply getting in and out of the car requires some black belt maneuvering, so it's come in handy in that respect. So now, having the body, of course, you need a frame. So I found a book on building sports car frames from like the 1960s, and drew it up on a napkin, which is the traditional method for drawing up any important automotive concept. And then I built it out of 2x4s on my garage floor to fit the body, and the attachment points for the suspension. And then I took it to my friend. My friend had built stainless steel exhaust for my '65 Mustang. He had built frames for a dozen cars. Very talented fabricator, George Baldwin. And then he made it out of metal. So I felt I had much more involvement in the frame design. And it handles like a dream, and you can jack it up on any point. Furthest forward, furthest rear, on the side of the car, you can jack it up at any point, and both wheels come up off the ground. It's that rigid. It really lets the suspension do its work, which is important. You spend a bunch of money on coilovers, you might as well let them do their jobs correctly. But I also started with an engine because of budget. I started with an engine that a friend had. He had the rack and pinion from a Mercury Capri. Back in the 70s, they were the cool little Mercury car that came from England, and a 2-liter Capri engine, which is the same as the Pinto engine that they run in Formula 2000. It's got a decked head, flat top pistons, the head's completely worked. It's got a hotter cam, and it's been balanced. It's got a stronger connecting rods, and it's got a balance crank. Everything's balanced. At some point it had twin side draft Lordos. I've gone to a single side draft right now in preparation for going to fuel injection in the future. But all these parts are, kind of relatively hard to find. Getting a single barrel Weber manifold, I had to go to Australia to get that. I think I told you I had a custom shift knob made. I have an original FIV Torino steering wheel from back in the 60s, old VDO gauges from the 70s. It's got original fiberglass bucket seats with the original diamond pleating on them from back in the 60s. It's got, like I said, the Mustang 2 front suspension kit, but with tubular A-arms. It's got 4-wheel coilovers, adjustable coilovers, and that's got an 8-inch 67 Mustang rear end, 350 posi, that was then narrowed, and then we designed a suspension system, the non-parallel 4-bar suspension system, aluminum gas tank that we built the frame to fit around. It's got an original Enots aluminum gas cap. It's got Lucas lights all around, auxiliary lights, except for the front marker lights are from a Maserati. Also used on the Ferrari GTO. And obviously a lot of the styling has been inspired by the 1960s sports racers of that period. this is sort of my homage to them. I could never afford an Alfa Romeo TZ2, which this is similar to. I could never afford a GTO or a Ferrari or anything of that ilk. So I decided to design and build my own, and it's been a process. Like I said, I joke, but if you're going to build a car, start with a car. When I was doing stand-up, a lot of people would ask me, what exactly are you building? It would come up in conversation, and I said insurmountable debt, but that was too long, so I just called it the Novetta. But it's got all sorts of neat tricks and things on it that you would find in period. Sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. Traditionally, a 60s sports car wouldn't have a high stoplight, but for a car 40 inches tall, you want to be seen. You want to be noticed on the road. There are trucks. I'm not as tall as their tires, and I discovered in looking and researching old sports cars that in the endurance racing, they would have marking lights on top to indicate they were going to pit, and they would have different numbers of them and colors of them to indicate the different team cars. So I mounted a high Lucas red light, a pit light on the top of my car, and I wired it to be a high stoplight. So added visibility and still period correct. And then of course the green is a 1966 Ford truck color, boxwood green, inspired to some degree by the Linden Green GT40 Roadster of the day. I just love that green. I want something just a little bit darker. And I found it in a Ford truck color, and of course everybody mocked me mercilessly about painting the thing green. It's got a full roll cage just to make it a little bit safer. Actually, in the day, it probably would have just had a rear roll hoop with maybe 2 supports, but I decided to go with a full roll cage for additional torsional rigidity in the chassis, and also for safety purposes. So, very talented guy, Greg Grisham, put that together for me. God, I've had so many people help me along the way. Mike Ray had sat in his garage for a good year and a half while I scraped to get the money together to do the body, and then I got the body, worked on by somebody. Then you had to go back and redo all the work that they goofed up. People, they see a project like this and they kind of want to be involved, which is really, really cool. But then they overextend themselves in terms of what they can promise, in terms of the quality of work that I was looking for. Granted, I was on a budget, but I think everybody runs into that when they're building a car. Is you turn it over to somebody who was at an engine builder for a year and a half. He turned it back to me and said, I can't make it. I don't know why I can't make this work. It's impossible. Something's broken. So I got a book that said how to hot rod your 2-liter Ford 4-cylinder. And I read the book. I put it together the way the book said and made sure all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, and it turns out I got a pretty darn good running little motor. Went with a side exhaust just for period correctness, but then I stuffed some Harley motorcycle baffles into the single 2-inch tube to not offend the neighbors completely. It's got some really, really cool wheels. If anything, somebody noticed something, immediately it's the wheels on this car, and they were part of the reason the car got built. I found them on eBay, fairly inexpensive, and they had the absolute perfect shape to go with the concept that I had in my head. If you're going to build a car, you're going to do anything, have the concept as fully formed in your mind as you can to avoid going down too many disparate roads, and you can focus on getting what you really, really want, especially if you're on a limited budget. You don't want to do things twice. I did a lot of things twice anyway, even though I had a very, very clear idea in my head. But if you can mitigate that as much as possible, do so. But the wheels were the perfect shape. And I bought them, and I'm thinking, they're gorgeous, right? The only thing was they were polished, mirror polished. So the first thing I did was I took them to a powder coat, and I said, I want you to sandblast or bead blast these things, whatever you do, to make them rough, and then paint them gray, powder coat them gray. And he was like, I don't think I can. I don't think you want me to do that. I said, no, I'm sure this is what I want. And he goes, I don't think so. In fact, he goes, I said, well, that's what I want. He showed me a stipple powder coating in gray. And he said, okay, but I'm going to have to ask you to pay me up front. Okay, why is that? And he goes, because when you get them back, you're not going to be happy with them. I said, okay. So about a week later, he called me. He goes, you got to come pick these wheels up like right away before I sell them. People have been offering me outrageous money for these wheels, and they're like from the 80s, early 90s, and yet they didn't make very many sets of them. And once you make them gray and rough, it simulates mildly degraded magnesium, used magnesium. So really the perfect look for the period of the car, the style of the car. They make it. They just absolutely make it. And then of course I had to have, at least period correct looking tires. So I bought a set of Firestone Firehawks, and then I just blacked out the Firehawk, and it looks like it was original Firestone, leather tires from back in the day. Little details like that. It took me forever to find all the knobs exactly like what I wanted for the car, and all to match, so that it looked like they were all put in period. The toggle switches had to be, in period. So I found vintage toggle switches and cleaned them up and utilized those. A car like this, as a race car, would not have had a horn button. There's no horn button on the wheel. So I found from an old recording studio, they had a momentary switch on one of the big tape machines. And it was just this perfect big black round button. So he integrated that into the dash. And then of course, because I like funny, I put the Dymo tape moron alert on it. And people always wonder, what's the big moron alert button? I said, it's the horn. So little touches like that. There's a flasher for the four ways that really are important to have on a modern car, and it just says "uh-oh" next to it in the Dymo tape. It has a clocked tachometer, turned so that red line is just about straight up. You don't have to think about where it is. You know that straight up is right about red line. It's got, for the trunk hinges, it's got mini Cooper lower door hinges, because they have just the right little bit of an angle. They go with a little swoopy trunk on the back. And little details like this, you don't discover you need to address until you get into it pretty far. And you need that trunk to swing up, unimpinged, through its complete arc. And you need that little bit of angle, and of course they look period correct. They're in an unfinished aluminum look. Obviously the handmade little latch here for the trunk. So that's the hood, the trunk reinforced. Right now there's access to the aluminum gas tank, and then this will be a finished trunk eventually. Plexiglass rear window, or Lexan rather, with the pop open, pop shut aircraft vents. Nice little touch from back in the day. And of course, the vintage removable steering wheel. I don't know how close up you can get, but you can see it has quick release buckles from Vietnam era parachute harnesses, complete with the military spec U.S. Air Force numbers on them. So those were a neat find. And I've got a pair of them, and then I found webbing, thank you Internet, to match exactly the correct width, color, and accent, the yellow accent on the green webbing. So that's the fun stuff for me that they do. And of course, as I mentioned before, the handmade 917 Porsche style shift knob. MGB trunk latches for door releases, for door latches. Little simple things like this, spun aluminum radiat style mirrors on the car. Like I said, I love my racing mirrors. And then I had to hand build little plinths so that they would stand out from the body far enough to see over the flared hips on it. It's got a 1930s or 40s Ford rear view mirror in it, but adapted to an MGB style attachment. Little things like this. It's got 1950 Pontiac taillights that the roundness, matches the families with at least the radiat style mirrors. It's got 1965 Mustang fog lights in it. Then of course there's the ubiquitous mesh that it needed in all of the holes in the body for releasing air from the body or letting air into the body. It's got a 1980s something gasser hood scoop that I chopped the top 2 inches off and chopped 4 inches out of the middle and plopped that on the hood, because this is what car people do, is they start gathering things that family with or support something else that they've done. So I bought a 1962 Falcon Ranchero that will be designed to be the support vehicle for the Novetta race engineering team. And it's a beautiful pale robin's egg blue that I thought, the Maranello concessionaires Ferraris in the 60s were red, Ferrari red, but they were accented with this pale robin's egg blue. I thought, well, this would be a perfect homage to them. So I put the Baffin blue in the cove in the rear and as lipstick on the front of the car. And it really, you think of olive green and pale blue as not being particularly perfect accent color, but it's turned out very, very nicely with just a little black pinstripe around it. I've enjoyed the process, and now that it's finally done, I'm really enjoying the fact that other people enjoy it, and I take it to the Cars and Coffee now and again, and park it next to an original 904 Porsche, and as many people, I think, look at the Novetta as look at the Porsche, maybe just because they've never seen anything like it before, but I think it captures the period, and I think it, with the help that I've had, the talented people that have helped me, it's turned out pretty well. So, if you're going to build something, have a clear picture in your head, some money in your pocket, and a little bit of time. That would be my suggestion.